Good evening and welcome back. Last time, we watched the Viking Age begin in fire on the shore of Lindisfarne. But we left a question unanswered, the one those frightened monks must have asked as the strange ships pulled away. Who were these men? Where had they come from? Tonight, we go back and further north to find out. So settle in and let us leave the raids behind for a while. Their homeland was the far north of Europe, the lands we now call Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. It was a hard country of steep grey mountains and deep fjords, where only narrow strips of land were fit for farming. And it was cold. The winters were long and dark, the growing season short. To live here was to know hardship, and to respect the sea, for the sea, more than the land, was the road that bound their scattered world together. It is worth clearing away a common mistake. There was no single nation of Vikings, no united kingdom, no one king who ruled them all. There were only many small realms, scattered across 1,000 miles of coast. And the word itself did not name a people. To go a Viking was to do a thing, to sail off for plunder or trade. Most of the north never raided at all. They were farmers and fishermen and herders. For the heart of their world was the farm, and the centre of the farm was the longhouse, a single great hall of timber and turf, low and long, where a family and their animals and their servants lived together through the dark of winter, gathered around a central fire, whose smoke drifted up through the roof. Their society had its ranks. At the top stood the jarls, the nobles and chieftains, rich in land and followers. Below them, the carls, the free farmers and craftsmen and traders, who were the backbone of the north. And beneath them all, the thralls, the enslaved, many taken captive in raids, who did the hardest labour and owned nothing at all, not even themselves. It was a world that prized honour above almost everything. A man's reputation, his given word, the standing of his family, these were guarded fiercely, and a single insult could echo for generations in blood feud. Yet it was not lawless. Free men gathered at assemblies they called the Thing, out beneath the open sky, to settle disputes and keep a fragile peace. And it was not the men alone who held this world together. By the measure of their age, the women of the north held a remarkable place. A woman could own property and inherit it, and seek a divorce if her husband wronged her. And when the men were away at sea, it was very often the woman who ran the farm and kept the whole enterprise alive through the winter. They had no great cities and little writing, yet they were not without records of their own. Through the long dark evenings they told stories of heroes and ancestors, of gods and monsters, passed from voice to voice down the years, and they carved letters they called runes into wood and bone, and standing stones of grey granite, which stand in the northern earth still, weathered but unbroken, 1,000 years on. But if one thing above all set the Norse apart, one thing that would carry them out of their cold corner of the world and into history, it was their ships. For the people of the north were, before anything else, masters of the sea. The Longship was among the finest vessels the world had yet seen. Built of overlapping planks, its hull could flex and bend with the waves rather than break against them. It was light and swift and strong, driven by a single great sail, or by oars when the wind failed, able to cross the open ocean and outrun almost anything then afloat. And it had one gift that changed everything. Its hull was so shallow it needed only a few feet of water beneath it. It could sail far up rivers, deep into the heart of a country, and it could land not at a harbour, but on any open beach. There was almost nowhere the Longship could not reach. It is no accident, then, that the Viking Age began when it did. The ships had at last grown good enough to carry men across the sea and bring them safely home again, laden with whatever they had taken. Without the Longship, there would have been no Age of the Northmen at all. The ship was the key that unlocked the world. And we should not think of them only as raiders. The same ships that carried some men to plunder carried others to trade. Norse merchants ranged astonishingly far, east along the great rivers, all the way to the markets of the east, where they brought home silver by the pound. They were, in their way, among the great travellers of their age. We should say something, too, of what they believed, though the fullest telling must wait for another night. The Norse worshipped many gods. There was Odin, the one-eyed wanderer, god of wisdom and war and the dead. There was Thor, the thunderer, guardian of gods and men, beloved of the common folk. And there were many others besides, each with a place in a vast and shadowed story. But the deepest thread in their belief was not any single god, it was fate. The Norse held that the day of a person's death was already fixed, and could not be hastened or delayed by any act of their own. And there is a strange freedom in that. If the hour of your death is already set, there is nothing to be gained by cowardice, and nothing to be lost by courage. And those who fell bravely, it was said, were carried to a great hall of the dead, to feast and fight until the end of all things. This was a people who could look upon their own doom without flinching, who told, even of their gods, a story that ended in a last great battle and the fall of the world itself. That willingness to face the dark unafraid would help make the men of the North among the most formidable warriors of their age. Which brings us at the last to the great question that historians still turn over to this day. Why, then? These people had lived in the North for countless generations. Why, at the close of the 8th century, did they suddenly burst outward upon the world in raid after raid? The truth is that we do not fully know, but there are clues. Some point to the land. Good farmland was scarce, and as the population grew, there may simply have been too many sons and too little soil to divide among them. For a young man with no land to inherit, the sea offered what the land could not, a chance at wealth and standing and a name of his own. Others looked to the wealth waiting across the water. The monasteries and towns of Christian Europe had grown rich, and they were almost wholly undefended, guarded by nothing but their faith. To men with fast ships and sharp iron, such places were not holy ground. They were opportunity, ripe and unprotected. And beneath it all lay the ships, for none of it would have been possible without them. Most likely it was no single cause, but all of these together, hunger for land, hunger for wealth, and at last the vessels to carry men wherever they wished to go. A door had opened onto the world, and the men of the North walked through it. So this, then, was who they were. Not demons risen from the sea, as the terrified monks believed, but people, farmers and fishermen and sailors, from a cold and beautiful land at the edge of the world, bound by honour, unafraid of fate, and carried upon the finest ships of their age. In the years to come, that rare combination would fall upon the coasts of Europe, again and again. In numbers the world was